Well, good morning, everybody. This is Lisa here. Today I'm going to show you how to make this simple wire wrap beaded ring. If you are just starting out on your wire wrap journey, well, this project is perfect for beginners. So stick around and get ready to learn how to make this cute little ring. So first, let's get started with the materials we'll be needing for this project. The first thing you'll need is a 20 gauge piece of wire cut at about 8.5 inches long. You're going to need a 6mm bead. I've chosen this little Rondelle faceted 6mm bead. It's a sage colored green. And you'll need a pair of chain nose pliers, a pair of flush cutters because they're flat on one side. You'll need a bench block. You'll need a nylon hammer to work harden your ring band. And you'll need a ring mandrel of some sort. You can just use something that you know the measurement is about the size of the ring you want to make. And that concludes the materials needed for this project. If you need to see this list, check out my video description below. Now let's get started on this project. To begin, we're going to use this 20 gauge wire that was measured at 8.5 inches long and this 6mm bead. So generally people often will put this bead onto the wire and then find the center and then wrap it around the mandrel. The problem I have with that is it makes the wire come up away from that mandrel, and it's just hard to wire wrap for me and get that nice round ring. So I'm going to find a spot on my mandrel the size that I want or close to the size, and I generally go a little bit smaller to begin with. And then I'm just going to wrap the center point of this wire around the mandrel. So I'm going to do a full wrap and then make sure I'm pulling it tight, keeping it up against that mandrel, and then go for a complete second wrap and then even past like that. Now see there, when you let go of that wire, it tends to get a little bit bigger. And so that's why I start off a little bit smaller. Now I'm going to take my 6mm Rondelle faceted bead. As you can see, it's got a good size hole. You want to make sure the hole fits your wire. And I'm just going to thread this bead on and then find that center point of the top of the ring. Just like that. Now, grabbing a hold of the ring shank on one side, I'm going to take that outermost wire and wrap it around my bead. Again, grabbing the ring shank and then grab the other wire and wrap it around the bead. And the reason I'm grabbing my ring shank is to keep the shape as much as possible here. And then there you can see I've got those wires wrapped securely around that bead, as close as possible. And now I'm going to put it back on my mandrel and just make sure I've got my shape that I want and the size I want. So in this case, I'd like to have a size 6.5 ring. And if I were to make this exactly 6.5 right now, the wraps are going to make it a little smaller. So I tend to go about a half size to a full size larger. So since this is supposed to be a 6.5 ring, I go up to about a 7.5 here. Right now it's at a 7. I'm adjusting my wire here and make sure it's laying flat up against my bead with my chain nose pliers gently, because you don't want to break your bead. And there, I'm kind of making those little adjustments. And so right there, I'm at about a size 7. And now I'm going to push it down a little bit past to a 7.5. So this way, when I pull it back up and I just let it sit, it's at a size 7. This allows for those wraps to be added to the band and make it at about a size 6.5 by the time I'm done. So the more wraps you use, the smaller your band will become. So here I'm going to take the end of one of my wires and bend it in underneath my ring shaft. Just like that. And I'm going to pull this in one wrap around the ring shank. So as you can see, I'm trying to keep that wire up close to the bead as well as bring that wire wrap around. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Now I like to just start off with one wrap on each side just so to make sure that I get this pretty even. So there we've got the start of that. I'm going to use my chain nose pliers to help me snug this wire up around that ring shank. And then I'm going to press those wraps up against each side of the bead. I want to keep it as close to the bead as possible. And then I'm going to do a second wrap. While keeping those wraps nice and tight, grab my chain nose pliers and tightly pull this wire around that ring shank, trying not to misshape your ring shank. And there's the third wrap, and I'm going to pull that up nice and tight. And then right here, I'm going to bend this wire out a little bit because it's come in a little tight right there. And I want that bead to sit flush up against there like that. Now we're going to do the same thing on this other side. I'm going to make sure this wire wrap is up close to the bead. The thing about wire work is there's always lots of adjustments and moving and things like that happens. The nice thing is wire is very malleable and you can readjust and adjust as needed. So now we're going to pull that wrap around the ring shank nice and tight. See here, you can kind of tell those ring shank wires crossed over, so I'm going to fix that and try to hold that in so that it does not cross over themselves. And then tighten that down like that. And now I'm going to do my third wrap, actually come around to start my third wrap because that was the second wrap. And here we come up and over, tightening my wraps as I go. And there's the end of that third wrap. I'm going to pull it under and straight up. Again, I'm going to make sure I push those wraps up nice and secure, being careful not to break your bead or misshape your ring shank. I'm going to make sure we're all good and tight. And now we're going to cut the tail ends of these wires off. So with my flush cutters from the inside of the band, I'm going to flush cut the tail end of that wire off. And now that little tail, we need to press it down or burnish it down to the inside of the ring shank. And you want to make sure it's burnished down so that you can't feel it under there. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to tighten this last little wire wrap down a little bit, Make sure we're all nice and tight before I go ahead and get that ready to cut. And there I'm taking my flush cutters and I'm going to snip off the end of that wire. I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers and then burnish the tail end of this wrap down to the inside of my ring shank, like so. And then check and make sure you can't feel any scratchiness. And then just do any adjustments you might need to do. And now we're going to pop that ring back on the mandrel to fix any problems where maybe the ring shank got misshapen a little bit. So this will help fix that. And we're also going to stretch this ring out just a little bit. So I'm taking my rawhide hammer and I'm hammering on the top side of this ring to kind of push it down onto the mandrel. And then I'm going to take it off and I'm going to flip it over and do the other side, because the ring mandrel obviously is larger at the base and narrower at the top. So one of those little ring shanks is going to be a little larger than the other. So I like to flip it over to kind of stretch this evenly. So here I'm still hammering downward on this to get it to the exact place I want it to be in size. And now I'm going to remove it one last time, slide it back down, and do one final time, tapping it downward to where I want this ring to sit. I go past just a little bit of the size I want it to be. Now, when I slide this back up and loosen it up on the mandrel and just let it fall, it is falling at about 6.5 on the ring mandrel. It's kind of hard to see the markings in this lighting on my camera, but it's at about 6.5 there. Now I'm going to just give it a few whacks straight onto that ring band, just to harden that ring band really well. Hardening the ring band is really essential to kind of keep its shape. So here we see it's completed. And I'm going to show you, this is a size 6.5 ring sizer. And then this is the 6.5 ring, and it does fit just as that 6.5 ring sizer fit. And there you can see it's nice and round. And there's the completed project. This little ring is going to my sweet little daughter who loves gold. And this is gold-plated copper wire. And she loves the color sage green. So it's perfect for her. What did you guys think of this project? Let me know in the comments below. Any comment is welcome. If you really enjoyed watching this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching. We'll see you all next Thursday.